Exact Ezekiel Chapters 25 through 28. Introduction. Ezekiel turns from his message to Judah and Israel and their judgment by the Lord, to the task of a rapid-firing machine gun approach to the surrounding nations that scoffed and laughed during Israel's anguish and ultimate captivity: Ammon, Moab, Edom, Philistia, Tyre, and Sidon. The Ammonites were especially expressive in their jubilance over seeing God's children taken away by Babylon. In modern parlance, they behaved like radicals do today, and with them much of the Islamic world. Perhaps, this is the reaction throughout history for those nations who will ultimately answer for their responses to the misery imposed on God's children. Each of the nations Ezekiel tasks, beginning in chapter 25, finds itself under heaven's indictment. With the Lord's leadership, Ezekiel reads the indictments which spell out their particular venues. He then follows up with God's sentence. No doubt there are similarities in their heathen rage, but some are more egregious than others. In the next chapters, for instance, Tyre and Sidon become the symbolic standard for any nation which follows their lead. They become an example, like Sodom and Gomorrah. One primary fact to keep in mind, during the study of the next chapters, is there is no need for a prophet to actually be in the land addressed to make effective the prophetic word. Sometimes, in my own ministry, I have sent prophetic words and messages in tongues to locales, cities and countries, without traveling to them. Ezekiel was familiar with each of these ensuing places while remaining in Babylon. To the people of Ammon. Ezekiel chapter 25 verses 1 through 7. Then this message came to me from the Lord: Son of man, look toward the land of Ammon and prophesy against its people. Give the Ammonites this message from the sovereign Lord: Hear the word of the sovereign Lord. Because you scoffed when my temple was desecrated, mocked Israel in her desolation, and laughed at Judah as she went away into exile, I will allow nomads from the eastern deserts to overrun your country. They will set up their camps among you and pitch their tents on your land. They will harvest all your fruit and steal your livestock. And I will turn the city of Rabbah into a pasture for camels, and all the land of the Ammonites into an enclosure for sheep. Then you will know that I am the Lord. And the sovereign Lord says, because you clapped and stamped and cheered with glee at the destruction of my people, I will lift up my fist against you. I will give you as plunder to many nations. I will cut you off from being a nation and destroy you completely. Then you will know that I am the Lord. Warning: this is God's method of handling nations that rejoice in hilarious outbursts against his people. The atrocities, worldwide, caused by rogue people, which have been greeted with rejoicing, from those not his people, will not go unnoticed or unpunished. History will yet record how those who engage in such behavior will be obliterated and their remembrance blotted from the ages. Complete destruction is their national heritage and reward. Count on it. Zephaniah chapter 2 verses 8 through 10. I have heard the insults of Moab, and the taunts of the Ammonites, who insulted my people, and made threats against their land. Therefore, as surely as I live, declares the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, surely Moab will become like Sodom, the Ammonites like Gomorrah, a place of weeds and salt pits, a wasteland forever. The remnant of my people will plunder them. The survivors of my nation will inherit their land. This is what they will get in return for their pride, for insulting and mocking the people of the Lord Almighty. Those in the Arab world, who rejoice over the killing of Christians and the persecution of God's people, have no idea the treasury they have in store for them. Utter darkness, destruction and fire await them, along with all others who remonstrate against the Christian nations. 9:11 And every demon-directed act against Christians since then, will not go unpunished. Then they will know the true God who rises to vindicate his own. Let God arise and his enemies be scattered. Those who take political action against the people of God, anywhere on earth, will also feel the sting of the lictor's lash, for the Lord watches over his people and calls to righteous judgment those who speak or act against them. Amos chapter 1 verses 13 through 15. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have ripped up the women with child of Gilead, that they might enlarge their border. But I will kindle a fire in the wall of Rabbah, and it shall devour the palaces thereof, with shouting in the day of battle, with the tempest in the day of the whirlwind, and their king shall go into captivity, he and his princes together, saith the Lord. The Ammonites, descendants of Lot and his daughter, stacked their own deck of destruction. Look at their record of offenses. 1. Ammonites despised the Lord's people when they came out of Egypt, like Palestinians do today. Judges chapter 11 verse 13. And the king of the children of Ammon answered unto the messengers of Jephthah, because Israel took away my land, when they came up out of Egypt, from Arnon even unto Jabbok, and unto Jordan, now therefore restore those lands again peaceably. 2. Treated the people of God with contempt. 2 Samuel chapter 10 verses 3 and 4. And the princes of the children of Ammon said unto Hanun their lord, Thinkest thou that David doth honour thy father, that he hath sent comforters unto thee? Hath not David rather sent his servants unto thee, to search the city, and to spy it out, and to overthrow it? Wherefore Hanun took David's servants, and shaved off the 1/2 of their beards, and cut off their garments in the middle, even to their buttocks, and sent them away. 3. Imported their false religion and seduced Israel with them. 1 Kings chapter 11 verse 7. Then did Solomon build an high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Mulch, the abomination of the children of Ammon. 4. Always sided with the enemies of Israel. 2 Chronicles chapter 20 verse 1. It came to pass after this also, that the children of Moab, and the children of Ammon, and with the mothers beside the Ammonites, came against Jehoshaphat to battle. There comes a time, in the economy of God, when it is declared, enough is enough. Ammon stepped across the line of judgment and perished. Think not a world, that there is no judgment for errant actions, it awaits even now in the wings of history. To the people of Moab. Ezekiel chapter 25 verses 8 through 11. And the sovereign Lord says, because the people of Moab have said that Judah is just like all the other nations, I will open up their eastern flank and wipe out their glorious frontier cities, Beth Jeshimoth, Baal-meon, and Kiriath-Haim. And I will hand Moab over to nomads from the eastern deserts, just as I handed over Ammon. Yes, the Ammonites will no longer be counted among the nations. And in the same way, I will bring my judgment down on the Moabites. Then they will know that I am the Lord. In Numbers chapter 22, it is recorded that Balak, king of the Moabites, sought Balaam to curse the people of Israel. Balaam could not curse them, until Israel sinned against God. Evil was eventually introduced in the form of sexual promiscuity. Israel fell by Balaam's seducing spirits. The children of Israel were constantly under the influence of their neighbors and especially susceptible to religious paganism and false gods. Judges chapter 10 verse 6. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord, and served Baalim, and Ashtaroth, and the gods of Syria, and the gods of Zidon, and the gods of Moab, and the gods of the children of Ammon, and the gods of the Philistines, and forsook the Lord, and served not him. This, alone, would be enough to cause the prophetic words from Ezekiel to sting those named in the subsequent verses. No wonder God moved to destroy those named in these chapters. Applications to today's world are astounding. Modern society has chosen a path, like Israel's, in serving not him. Moloch, like sacrifices of children on the altar of abortion and the casting aside of prayer and the Bible, cannot garner a different outcome than those imposed on Moab. To the people of Edom. Ezekiel chapter 25 verses 12 through 14. And the sovereign Lord says, the people of Edom have sinned greatly by avenging themselves against the people of Judah. Therefore, says the sovereign Lord, I will raise my fist of judgment against Edom. I will wipe out their people, cattle, and flocks with the sword. I will make a wasteland of everything from Teman to Didon. By the hand of my people of Israel, I will accomplish this. They will carry out my furious vengeance, and Edom will know it is from me. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. Edom is the territory to the east of the Jordan. It takes in the mountainous terrain which is now Jordan and the West Bank. Tourists throng the area of Petra, the city of the rose-red rock, which was hewn uniquely into the high mountain area. Petra acted like a turnstile for east-west traffic. Invading armies from the west were befriended and given supplies to enhance their invasion of Israel. On the other hand, they impeded the armies of Israel by slowing their progress, limiting assistance and acting as a general barrier to them. One must turn to the prophet Obadiah to grasp the long-term judgment on the Edomites. Obadiah verses 1 through 4. We have heard a message from the Lord that an ambassador was sent to the nations to say, get ready, everyone. Let's assemble our armies and attack Edom. The Lord says, I will cut you down to size among the nations, Edom, you will be small and despised. You are proud because you live in a rock fortress and make your home high in the mountains. Who can ever reach us way up here? You ask boastfully. Don't fool yourselves. Though you soar as high as eagles and build your nest among the stars, I will bring you crashing down. I, the Lord, have spoken. Just utilizing excerpts emphasizing judgment, notice the following passage and who executes that judgment, Israel. In this passage, God gives the reason these children of Esau are his target. Obadiah verses 10 through 14. Because of the violence you did to your close relatives in Israel. Now you will be destroyed completely and filled with shame forever. 11 For you deserted your relatives in Israel during their time of greatest need. You stood aloof, refusing to lift a finger to help when foreign invaders carried off their wealth and cast lots to divide up Jerusalem. You acted as though you were one of Israel's enemies. You shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have gloated when they exiled your relatives to distant lands. You shouldn't have rejoiced because they were suffering such misfortune. You shouldn't have crowed over them as they suffered these disasters. You shouldn't have plundered the land of Israel when they were suffering such calamity. You shouldn't have gloated over the destruction of your relatives, looting their homes and making yourselves rich at their expense. You shouldn't have stood at the crossroads, killing those who tried to escape. You shouldn't have captured the survivors, handing them over to their enemies in that terrible time of trouble. Obadiah was the first prophet to Israel 840 B.C. On the scene, after Samuel 1043 B.C. and Elijah and Elisha 852 B.C., his pronouncement of judgment on the unspiritual Edomites chilled the air and gave Israel hope. Ezekiel also says Israel will vindicate itself against them. 248 years after Obadiah's words, judgment was still hanging over their nation. Having gloated as the Assyrians captured Samaria and the northern tribes, 10. They continued their namesake's attitude. The words of the Lord will not return to him void, they will come to pass. Modern Israel should have claimed the promises of Obadiah and the Lord, and never given away Gaza and the West Bank. They were faithless in that act, and the words of the Lord should have been their guide. Alas, all his promises are yes and amen. Obadiah verses 15 through 21. The day is near when I, the Lord, will judge the godless nations. As you have done to Israel, so it will be done to you. All your evil deeds will fall back on your own heads. Just as you swallowed up my people on my holy mountain, so you and the surrounding nations will swallow the punishment I pour out on you. Yes, you nations will drink and stagger and disappear from history, as though you had never even existed. But Jerusalem will become a refuge for those who escape, it will be a holy place. And the people of Israel will come back to reclaim their inheritance. At that time Israel will be a raging fire, and Edom, a field of dry stubble. The fire will roar across the field, devouring everything and leaving no survivors in Edom. I, the Lord, have spoken. Then my people living in the Negev will occupy the mountains of Edom. Those living in the foothills of Judah will possess the Philistine plains and take over the fields of Ephraim and Samaria. And the people of Benjamin will occupy the land of Gilead. The exiles of Israel will return to their land and occupy the Phoenician coast as far north as Zephath. The captives from Jerusalem exiled in the north will return to their homeland and resettle the villages of the Negev. Deliverers will go up to Mount Zion in Jerusalem to rule over the mountains of Edom. And the Lord himself will be king. Examine closely the futuristic tone of this passage. It reaches for a time beyond the present. God will judge the godless nations. Notice where the deliverers will rule from, Mount Zion. Yes, the godless nations that emulate Edom will be punished like Edom. To the people of Philistia. Lying to the south is the Gaza Strip and the ancient world of the Philistines. There, Goliath fell to the hand of David. There, Samson pulled down the stadium. So, why would modern Israel fear the Palestinians, Philistia to the Jews, Palestine to the Greco and Romans? Actually, Philistia was formed from a confederacy of cities, Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gath, and Ekron. Judges chapter 13 verse 3, 1 Samuel chapter 6 verse 17. Ezekiel chapter 25 verse 15 through 17. And the sovereign Lord says, the people of Philistia have acted against Judah out of revenge and long-standing contempt. Therefore, says the sovereign Lord, I will raise my fist of judgment against the land of the Philistines. I will wipe out the Kerethites and utterly destroy the people who live by the sea. I will execute terrible vengeance against them to rebuke them for what they have done. And when I have inflicted my revenge, then they will know that I am the Lord. Ezekiel now turns to the judgment pronounced against others in that sea area, Tyre and Sidon. The Lord is warning the inhabitants that surround Israel and Judah. Time has eroded and there is no way around God's plan. Chapters 26 through 28. The reader is now entering some of the most prolific chapters of the book. Keys are found in these verses that unlock prophecy in Revelation. So profound are the precepts in these chapters, that they must be viewed as God sees events, timeless and viewing the end as well as the beginning, all at once. Some events in these chapters are years apart, though they appear to be immediate. Every word, every aspect of their placement, punctuation and correlation are intricately woven. Therefore, it is obligatory to entertain some factors that are at play. First, there are prophetic words directed to multiple persons, although all those persons are referred to as King of Tyre. There are three kings addressed herein. 1. The actual ancient king of the old city of Tyre, located on the shoreline across from what eventually will be the new Tyre or Island of Wealth. The old Tyre was ruled by Hiram and his father before him. Hiram's father built the palaces of David and also traded and brought much of the wealth of the world to King David and his son, Solomon. Hiram acted as general contractor for the temple built by Solomon. 2. The second king of Tyre was like the Lord Mayor of the island community, a position afforded the high priest in their temple. New Tyre was established after the old city was ravaged by Nebuchadnezzar. It lasted until Alexander the Great conquered it. New Tyre worshipped the religion of Hercules and had a temple to him. It was denial of worship in this temple that caused Alexander to conquer the city in 332 B.C. Third, the third king of Tyre is Satan himself. The prince of Tyre, who was the son of perdition and whose spirit was what is known as the Antichrist of the end time, is referenced in these chapters. The son carries the DNA of his father in rebellion and pride. Below is a map depicting the two Tyre locations, old and new. Let this diagram act as a compass to guide you through the intertwined prophecies. In chapter 26, there are shifts between the old and the new Tyre. However, it is the attitude of both territories which permeates both scenes. Ezekiel chapter 26 verses 1 and 2. On February 3, during the 12th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity, this message came to me from the Lord, Son of man. Tyre has rejoiced over the fall of Jerusalem, saying, Ha! She who controlled the rich trade routes to the east has been broken, and I am the heir. Because she has been destroyed, I will become wealthy. Almost at that very moment in time, Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon turned from his sacking of Jerusalem and set his eyes on the wealth of Tyre. The Lord put it into his heart. After all, he was in the region. Why not? He did sack and destroy much of the old city, which caused the wealthiest among the Phoenician traders to reinforce and build on the nearby island, thereby establishing a trading point thought to be invulnerable. The attitude expressed in the Ha is similar to one who has survived his business partner and is capable of taking over all the business, an enterprise that initially involved a partnership with Solomon and a joint fleet of commercial ships. That, of course, explains the great wealth display when the Queen of Sheba visited. All sorts of items, from all over the world, were visible. Whether apes or gold, every asset was in abundance. Some historians point out the power of the Phoenician navy. Ezekiel lists some of the ship's materials in his prophecy. Far-reaching in their trading abilities, they traversed beyond what is commonly viewed as the ancient world. For instance, there are Phoenician tablets in northern Michigan dating back to 1000 B.C. Phoenicians probably were responsible for the removal of 500,000 tons of top-grade copper during that time. Could this be the copper as precious as gold in Ezra chapter 8 verse 27? Could this explain the tin mines of Glastonbury in England? Were they really the destination of the Phoenician navy in supplying the alloy used in gold production for Solomon? There are Hebrew writings in that area which date to 1000 B.C. Little wonder the old city rejoiced when its business partner fell to the Babylonians. With greedy eyes, they could only imagine the increased wealth they would gain. God passed judgment upon them. That judgment scanned 250 years and even beyond. Those who say, look at the city of Tyre, it lasted to modern times and can be seen on current maps, are fooled, because no one knows the exact location of the old city. Its timbers and building materials were cast into the sea by Alexander's causeway builders, nothing remained, not one rock. During Nebuchadnezzar's 13-year siege of the old city, those wealthy enough and skilled enough to book passage went to the site of the new city, on the island. They did not experience any of the looting and murder of the old city under Babylonian forces. They prospered and felt themselves impervious when they fended off other invasion forces during the 250-year time frame. This, of course, caused them to misjudge Alexander's invasion. Ezekiel chapter 26 verses 3 through 6. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says, I am your enemy, O Tyre, and I will bring many nations against you, like the waves of the sea crashing against your shoreline. They will destroy the walls of Tyre and tear down its towers. I will scrape away its soil and make it a bare rock. The island of Tyre will become uninhabited. It will be a place for fishermen to spread their nets, for I have spoken, says the sovereign Lord. Tyre will become the prey of many nations, and its mainland villages will be destroyed by the sword. Then they will know that I am the Lord. Both Old and New Tyre are addressed in these 3 verses. Primarily, the New Tyre and its 30,000 inhabitants is the main target. Nothing but trouble remained of the old city. However, the haughty, greedy, pride-filled citizenry lived on in the new location. They built a 150-foot wall. around the island kingdom. They established a pagan worship central temple, where human sacrifices were offered. The religion of Hercules was a religion of prosperity and privilege, including sexual immorality. Actually, Hiram, who constructed Solomon's temple, was of the Herculean religion. Some conjecture his influence, while explaining Solomon's departure from the Lord and establishment of places for idolatry throughout Israel's high places and valleys. Old Tyre, indeed, fulfilled the promise of verse 3, "And I will bring many nations against you, like the waves of the sea crashing against your shoreline." In 323 B.C., after Alexander's death, a faction sought to rebuild Tyre, but a rival general destroyed this effort 8 years into its revival. Afterwards, the Romans decided to rebuild it in 64 B.C., when all of Phoenicia was annexed to Rome. It was this Tyre that Paul preached in. However, in the 7th century A.D., the Muslims sacked the city and conquered the region. They destroyed the city, and to this day, no one knows the exact location of the old city. In verse 4, "They will destroy the walls of Tyre and tear down its towers. I will scrape away its soil and make it a bare rock." 5. The island of Tyre will become uninhabited. It will be a place for fishermen to spread their nets. When Alexander finally penetrated the island fortress, his troops slew the citizens and enslaved those who escaped the sword. They were merciless because of the intense fighting and casualties experienced during the 6 months building of the causeway and took vengeance. See the map and go to the website for an in-depth description of the events of that siege. Because of sediment, over time, the island now is a part of the mainland and the causeway is used by fishermen to dry their nets. Phooey on those schools that say this was a failed prophecy and point to modern Tyre. Ezekiel chapter 26 verses 7 through 14. For the sovereign Lord says, "I will bring King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, the king of kings from the north, against Tyre with his cavalry, chariots, and great army. First he will destroy your mainland villages. Then he will attack you by building a siege wall, constructing a ramp, and raising a roof of shields against you. He will pound your walls with battering rams and demolish your towers with sledgehammers. The hooves of his cavalry will choke the city with dust, and your walls will shake as the horses gallop through your broken gates, pulling chariots behind them. His horsemen will trample every street in the city. They will butcher your people, and your famous pillars will topple. They will plunder all your riches and merchandise and break down your walls. They will destroy your lovely homes and dump your stones and timbers and even your dust into the sea. I will stop the music of your songs. No more will the sound of harps be heard among your people. I will make your island a bare rock, a place for fishermen to spread their nets. You will never be rebuilt, for I, the Lord, have spoken." This is the word of the sovereign Lord. Nebuchadnezzar never conquered the island city, but it was his intention. The man who conquered him, Alexander, carried out the deed. So, there is a blending of the prophetic stream over history. The families of the old city were finally addressed in the new one. Verse 12 describes the building materials used by Alexander in building the causeway. Ezekiel chapter 26 verses 15 through 21. This is what the sovereign Lord says to Tyre: "The whole coastline will tremble at the sound of your fall, as the screams of the wounded echo in the continuing slaughter. All the seaport rulers will step down from their thrones and take off their royal robes and beautiful clothing. They will sit on the ground trembling with horror at what they have seen. Then they will wail for you, singing this funeral song. O famous island city, once ruler of the sea, how you have been destroyed! Your people, with their naval power, once spread fear around the world. Now the coastlands tremble at your fall. The islands are dismayed as you pass away. For the sovereign Lord says, I will make Tyre an uninhabited ruin. You will sink beneath the terrible waves of enemy attack. great seas will swallow you. I will send you to the pit to lie there with those who descended there long ago. Your city will lie in ruins, buried beneath the earth, like those in the pit who have entered the world of the dead. Never again will you be given a position of respect here in the land of the living. I will bring you to a terrible end, and you will be no more. You will be looked for, but you will never be found. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. As the heavily fortified island came to prominence, after the destruction of the old city, the only Tyre to be addressed was the island New City. Old Tyre became known as Yushu and lost its place in history. Currently, excavation shows the old coastline buried under 2 feet of mud. I will bring you to a terrible end, and you will be no more. You will be looked for, but you will never be found. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. Chapter 27. This whole chapter must be read as a funeral dirge. The elements fall into 3 categories. 1. Comparison of the ship of state to the actual ships of the naval fleet. The ingredients poured into the shipbuilding were the best and the finest skilled persons assisted in their making. Their warriors displayed their copper shields along the rail edge of the large ships in battle array. This may have influenced the Viking crews to do the same. 2. Those countries which traded with Tyre, and Tyre's influence of paganism possibly affected, are listed here. Look at who these countries are today, and it is evident that Tyre's footprint is there. Note, chapter 28 carries out this truth. 3. The worldwide effect of Tyre's destruction shows how formidable Tyre's reach was. The sobbing shipmen, the mercenaries, who were now unemployed, virtually ask the question, what will we do now? Their world had fallen apart. Ezekiel chapter 27 verse 1 through chapter 28 verse 1. Then this message came to me from the Lord, Son of man, sing a funeral song for Tyre, that mighty gateway to the sea, the trading center of the world. Give Tyre this message from the sovereign Lord, you claimed, O Tyre, to be perfect in beauty. You extended your boundaries into the sea. Your builders made you glorious. You were like a great ship built of the finest cypress from Sinai. They took a cedar from Lebanon to make a mast for you. They carved oars for you from the oaks of Bashan. They made your deck of pine wood, brought from the southern coasts of Cyprus. Then they inlaid it with ivory. Your sails were made of Egypt's finest linen, and they flew as a banner above you. You stood beneath blue and purple awnings made bright with dyes from the coasts of Elisha. Your oarsmen came from Sidon and Arvad, your helmsmen were skilled men from Tyre itself. Wise old craftsmen from Jubal did all the caulking. Ships came with goods from every land to barter for your trade. Men from distant Persia, Lydia, and Libya served in your great army. They hung their shields and helmets on your walls, giving you great honor. Men from Arvad and from Helash stood on your walls as sentinels. Your towers were manned by men from Gamad. Their shields hung on your walls, perfecting your splendor. Tarshish was your agent, trading your wares in exchange for silver, iron, tin, and lead. Merchants from Greece, Tubal, and Meshch brought slaves and bronze dishes. From Togarmah came riding horses, chariot horses, and mules. All these things were exchanged for your manufactured goods. Merchants came to you from Didon. Numerous coastlands were your captive markets. They brought payment in ivory tusks and ebony wood. Aram sent merchants to buy your wares. They traded turquoise, purple dyes, embroidery, fine linen, and jewelry of coral and rubies. Judah and Israel traded for your wares, offering wheat from Minnith, early figs, honey, oil, and balm. Damascus traded for your rich variety of goods, bringing wine from Helbon and white wool from Zahar. Greeks from Uzel came to trade for your merchandise. Wrought iron, Kassa, and calamus were bartered for your wares. Didon traded their expensive saddle blankets with you. The Arabians and the princes of Kedar brought lambs and rams and goats in trade for your goods. The merchants of Sheba and Rammah came with all kinds of spices, jewels, and gold in exchange for your wares. Haran, Caneh, Eden, Sheba, Hua, and Kilmid came with their merchandise, too. They brought choice fabrics to trade, blue cloth, embroidery, and many-colored carpets bound with cords and made secure. The ships of Tarshish were your ocean caravans. Your island warehouse was filled to the brim, the destruction of New Tyre. But look! Your oarsmen are rowing your ship of state into a hurricane. Your mighty vessel flounders in the heavy eastern gale. You are shipwrecked in the heart of the sea. Everything is lost: your riches and wares, your sailors and helmsmen, your shipbuilders, merchants, and warriors. On that day of vast ruin, everyone on board sinks into the depths of the sea. Your cities by the sea tremble as your helmsmen cry out in terror. All the oarsmen abandon their ships. The sailors and helmsmen come to stand on the shore. They weep bitterly as they throw dust on their heads and roll in ashes. 31 They shave their heads in grief because of you and dress themselves in sackcloth. They weep for you with bitter anguish and deep mourning. As they wail and mourn, they sing this sad funeral song. Was there ever such a city as Tyre, now silent at the bottom of the sea? The merchandise you traded satisfied the needs of many nations. Kings at the ends of the earth were enriched by your trade. 34 Now you are a wrecked ship, broken at the bottom of the sea. All your merchandise and your crew have passed away with you. All who live along the coastlands are appalled at your terrible fate. Their kings are filled with horror and look on with twisted faces. The merchants of the nations shake their heads at the sight of you, for you have come to a horrible end and will be no more. Chapter 28 The Real King of Tyre. Message to the King of Tyre. It is interesting to notice, in these scriptures, that the king of Tyre was in the Garden of Eden. Yes, his identity is revealed. This three-part chapter addresses the false spirit, who has a following which displays his character, and will Satan, the real king of Tyre, has a son the prince of Tyre, with his father's antichrist spirit. The prince of Tyre is the human king of Tyre on the island, who, like a puppet, gives his father a voice. Message to Sidon. Next, is a message to Sidon. Sidon was a cohort of Tyre and deserved to be judged. Message to Israel. Finally, there is a message to Israel, who suffered, and is now promised vindication in the form of a blessing. Beginning with an address to the real power behind Tyre's throne, the heavy hand of the Lord is revealed against Satan. The prince of Tyre, Satan's mouthpiece, is condemned. Ezekiel chapter 28 verses 1 through 19. Then this message came to me from the Lord, Son of man. Give the prince of Tyre this message from the sovereign Lord. In your great pride you claim, I am a god. I sit on a divine throne in the heart of the sea. But you are only a man and not a god, though you boast that you are like a god. You regard yourself as wiser than Daniel and think no secret is hidden from you. For with your wisdom and understanding you have amassed great wealth, gold and silver for your treasuries. Yes, your wisdom has made you very rich, and your riches have made you very proud. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says, because you think you are as wise as a god, I will bring against you an enemy army, the terror of the nations. They will suddenly draw their swords against your marvelous wisdom and defile your splendor. They will bring you down to the pit, and you will die there on your island home in the heart of the sea, pierced with many wounds. Will you then boast, I am a god? To those who kill you? To them you will be no god but merely a man. You will die like an outcast at the hands of foreigners. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. Then this further message came to me from the Lord, Son of man. Weep for the king of Tyre. Give him this message from the sovereign Lord. You were the perfection of wisdom and beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Your clothing was adorned with every precious stone, red carnelian, chrysolite, white moonstone, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald, all beautifully crafted for you and set in the finest gold. They were given to you on the day you were created. I ordained and anointed you as the mighty angelic guardian. You had access to the holy mountain of God and walked among the stones of fire. You were blameless in all you did from the day you were created until the day evil was found in you. Your great wealth filled you with violence, and you sinned. So I banished you from the mountain of God. I expelled you, O mighty guardian, from your place among the stones of fire. Your heart was filled with pride because of all your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth and exposed you to the curious gaze of kings. You defiled your sanctuaries with your many sins and your dishonest trade. So I brought fire from within you, and it consumed you. I let it burn you to ashes on the ground in the sight of all who were watching. All who knew you are appalled at your fate. You have come to a terrible end, and you are no more. The real king of Tyre found a body, the human king of Tyre, that would embody him. Who mighty that apply to today? Sidon. Ezekiel chapter 28 verses 20 through 24. Then another message came to me from the Lord, Son of man, look toward the city of Sidon and prophesy against it. Give the people of Sidon this message from the sovereign Lord, I am your enemy, O Sidon, and I will reveal my glory by what happens to you. When I bring judgment against you and reveal my holiness among you, everyone watching will know that I am the Lord. I will send a plague against you, and blood will be spilled in your streets. The attack will come from every direction, and your people will lie slaughtered within your walls. Then everyone will know that I am the Lord. No longer will Israel's scornful neighbors prick and tear at her like thorns and briars. For then they will know that I am the sovereign Lord. A blessing to Israel. Ezekiel chapter 28 verses 25 and 26. This is what the sovereign Lord says, the people of Israel will again live in their own land, the land I gave my servant Jacob. For I will gather them from the distant lands where I have scattered them. I will reveal to the nations of the world my holiness among my people. They will live safely in Israel and build their homes and plant their vineyards. And when I punish the neighboring nations that treated them with contempt, they will know that I am the Lord their God. This is an end-time prophetic word, and it will come to pass, even though millenniums have passed. It will come to pass just like the example of Tyre, who escaped the Assyrians and outfoxed Nebuchadnezzar by moving to the island, but finally succumbed to Alexander and those who followed him. Next study, in chapter 29, the Lord will reveal how Nebuchadnezzar was rewarded for his obedience and how Egypt was given to him for payment. Historians say that some of the residents of New Tyre escaped during the early part of the Alexandrian invasion, and they formed the city of Carthage that also was judged later on. I am indebted to Reverend Jim Heddock of Michigan who supplied me the bulk of his work on Ezekiel chapter 26 through 28. His decades-long research yielded the most of the eye-opening historical facts contained in this study.